Roy Firestone, 7-time Emmy Award winner. 7, that's a lot. That's more than 6, folks. 7 times. Number 2, 7-time Cable Ace Award winner. The host of Up Close for 2,412 years on ESPN. He's now a lead advisor with the National Sports Museum. He's interviewed over 5,000 athletes, musicians, actors, politicians. Sports Illustrated called him the best interviewer in the business, and he is. I don't care what anybody else says. He is. He graduated University of Miami. He's apparently afraid of the cold weather. He's been in LA for 46 years, and he arrived there when he was 6 years old, obviously. And so, welcome, Roy. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mark. It's good to be here. Can you hear me okay? Because this
Perfecto.
is new for me. This is a different format for me. Can you hear?
Yeah, I mean, you sound great, and I love the back. I mean, tell me a little bit about what's behind you there.
Okay, well, I'm going to duck out for just a second and talk to you. Can you see down here?
Yeah.
Right there. Or those Orioles, those are Oriole bobbleheads from different generations. I'm an Oriole guy. I was bat boy for the Orioles when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, on this side is the figurine of the team that I was bat boy for. This is the 1970 Baltimore Orioles. Let me see if I can lower this a little bit so you can see it.
Oh, awesome! Look at that. Oh, all of them. That's great.
All the players that I was the bat boy for, and then of course up here are the Hall of Famers from the Orioles. I was bat boy for 3 seasons at the beginning, the very, very, very early 70s, 71. And that's the years they were great, the Orioles great. And the interesting thing is I maintained my friendship with the players who are still alive remember me as the bat boy and not as the sportscaster. So I've had an amazing life. I've also been doing interviewing really well before that was just one stretch in the 12 years. I was at ESPN 2 different times and a USA Network, and I've been doing it for parts of 4 decades. It's just hard to believe, and it's closer to 6,000 interviews now. So it's been quite a ride, and I've interviewed everybody from ball players to Nixon, to Madonna, to James Stewart, the actor, to Miles Davis, and I think you probably saw some of those clips at the beginning. But I mean, I don't think that I could really compare what it is I've done to almost anybody in the business these days because of the diversity of what I do. I don't say that in a bragging way. I say that in a self-astonishment way. And I really am surprised at all the wonderful things that have happened for me in my career. And I like to share it. We'll talk about it today.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I need to know though, what was that one moment that you woke up one day and said, I'm just going to talk for a living?
Well, believe it or not, I think it happened. I was 15 years old when I was the bat boy for the Orioles, and I started interviewing the players with a little reel-to-reel tape recorder about this big. And the first guy I interviewed was a guy named Brooks Robinson. Some of you know that name, some of you may not. Brooks Robinson was a legendary Hall of Famer, and he became my friend. And when I interviewed him, when I was 15, I was so thrilled. I went home, got all excited, and I played it back. It was empty. It didn't record.
Oh. So
I had to go back the next day. And not only did he agree to do it, he didn't begrudgingly agree. He was cheerful. He goes, that happens. It's okay, Roy. And he did it. He did a great interview for my newspaper, from my junior high school newspaper. And we were friends for 52 years. And he just passed away about 6-7 weeks ago. One of my dearest friends in the world. He even stayed at my house. In fact, he saw a lot of this stuff, and he was very touched by the whole thing, especially all the Oriole, as you can see, all those Oriole bobbleheads. He was fascinated by it. He loved my house, and as I said, as we might show you, I also had a model train set up when he was here, and the model train setup goes every year during the holidays, right around holiday season. And he was pretty amazed by that too. I don't know if you want to show that clip or if we have that clip, but somebody was showing. Here it is. I think we're going to show a little of this. I can hear it, but there it is. Okay. Oh, there's this little hitchy. It's a little hitchy, but this is what it looks like. I do all the landscaping for this. You'll see a train coming by in about 2 seconds here. And I do this every year for the holidays. And Brooks was here when he saw it. Look at that. It's like an amusement park, the whole setup for the trains. I have two different trains. I am not trained. There you see one of them in the background. You'll be coming by. There it is. There you go. That's what the train looks like. Anyway, Brooks saw that, and he got a big kick out of that. And I put it up every year, and kids from all over the neighborhood come to see it. And
that's amazing.
A lot of things on my plate as these days. I've written 4 books. I do, but what I really am doing now, I produced a show called GOATs, Greatest of All Time. It hasn't aired yet. I interviewed 16 of the biggest names from the old days, so the greatest, Dr. Jade, Rodman, Martina Navratilova, Cal Ripken.
Wow.
A lot of them, 16 of them. But Jerry West was really an amazing interview. He was talking about his brother was killed in Korea in a Korean War, and his father was very abusive to him. He was so honest. I almost felt like stopping the interview. He was talking about his father abusing him, not sexually, but physically, threatening to beat him up and wanted to kill his father. It was unbelievable. And that has not aired yet. It's also part of a 3-part series on Wilt Chamberlain for Showtime. But what I am doing a lot of now is corporate speaking and performing. And I am a corporate performer, and I sing, I do impressions, I tell stories about my career. We just did a show in Florida literally last week. And if people are listening, have a corporate entity and would like me to come in and do something for them, I'd love to do it. If we can work something out, of course. But I've been doing this for parts of really 25 years.
All right, you're a modest guy, but I'm going to tell you, all right, I used to be in a band. I'm a little bit of a musician. I recognize talent when I see it. And I got to say, I was pretty blown away. Look, you've been talking for the last, 6,000 years and so forth, so you know how to talk, but you know how to sing. And you forget just the singing, but you're also able to emulate, different singers. And whether it's Sinatra, Sammy Davis, there's so many.
Smokey Robinson, Bee Gees. I do a whole bit where I have in my live show, where I do Casey counting down the hits, and I do in order Johnny Mathis, Tony Bennett, B.J. Thomas, Boz Scaggs, Gordon Lightfoot, Neil Diamond, and Sammy Davis Jr. And it's a fun little ride. It's like a 4-minute bit where I just go one to the other. And I do that, and I do a lot of storytelling about my sports career. And there's some very moving stories at the end of the show. And I just love it because, to me, it's a great vehicle beyond just a broadcast. I mean, I've been in broadcasting really 45 years. But to be on a live stage and to affect people's feelings, where you tell them a story, they can laugh, they can, in some cases, cry, in some cases, be inspired, I hope, in many cases. And I've been doing this I've done 2,000 shows. And
wow.
I do stuff for Wounded Warriors. I do stuff for fundraising for everything, every kind of malady you can imagine. But it's been satisfying for me in ways I can't describe, besides to say the only thing it has in common with my broadcast career is the microphone. But musically, I sing with a Grammy Award nominated album. I have had opened for Las Vegas with the great Lou Rawls. Some people may not remember that name. He was a great, one of the great singers of our generation. I played with Emmy Lou Harris. I've done a show with the Doobie Brothers, with Michael McDonald. And I get to do this all over the country. If people want to see it or read about it or maybe have an idea, I even do Christmas shows, believe it or not. And they can go to royfirestone.com if they want to see it. I know we're not supposed to sell stuff, but that's what I do.
Well, you're allowed to.
I love doing it. I love doing it. It's a side of me a lot of people don't know that I do, but I have been doing it a long time. As I said, close to 2,000 shows.
That's incredible. So wait a minute. I have a question though. When you were interviewing, I know you interviewed Paul McCartney, right?
Yeah.
And we're both huge Beatles freaks.
Right.
I mean, I am, and I know you are.
Right.
So look, I haven't interviewed 6,000 people, maybe a couple hundred, and I can safely say that no one is really, I haven't been too, nervous or whatever. I'm too old for that stuff kind of thing, right? There's one guy that I was kind of a little bit whatever because he was one of my icons at the time. And so Cheap Trick is one of my favorite musical bands. And I had a chance to meet and speak with Rick Nielsen, who was one of
Yes.
my guitar gods, like one of the icons, right?
I think wasn't he out of Chicago? Is he?
Yes, Rockford,
Yeah.
Illinois. Yeah.
Right.
And so he was one guy I was a little bit like, oh my God, I played in a band and we were playing his stuff when I was in high school and college. So he was my icon, but everybody else, whatever. In your case, I can't even imagine what it was like interviewing Paul McCartney when, I know so tell me about
Well,
that experience.
I got a story here that's going to
Yeah.
blow people's mind.
Yeah.
Well, everybody remembers me. I hope everybody remembers the scene I was in with Jerry Maguire,
Yeah.
where Cuba Gooding Jr. says, "I'm not going to cry, Roy," and we filmed the scene, 2 takes, by the way. It's Sony Pictures. I never thought that was going to make the movie. Not only to make the movie, it's an indelible part of the movie.
Sure.
Cuba Gooding Jr. jumps across the table. He hugs me. I love you. You made me cry, etc. Okay, so I forget about this, and the movie comes out. Then now people are calling me. They want to do Entertainment Tonight, all this stuff. Well, another 6 months go by, and I'm in Liverpool, England, at an event. Paul McCartney is going to sing, but he will not be at the reception. That's what I was told. So we go to this thing. I was on a jet lag situation. I was so tired because I flew in on a Friday to be at the Saturday show. I was so tired. And my friend and I went to the reception expecting Paul not to be there. And sure enough, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around, and I wish I could show you the picture. I don't know how this works. Will I lose you if I go to my pictures?
Yeah, probably.
All right,
Well,
hold on. I just want to see if I can show you this picture here.
If you hit on the bottom share at the very bottom.
Yeah, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Does it have to be on my desktop?
Yeah, somewhere. Probably.
Okay, hold on a second. I gotta let me get rid of the photos here. Are you still there?
Yes, sir.
You can still see me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I cannot see you all of a sudden now. Okay.
I'll tell you how to do that in a sec, but go ahead and find it.
All right. So let me see if I can get this thing out. You there?
Yep.
You can't
So
see that.
at the very top, you'll see on your row of things, you'll see a red dot that's shining.
Yeah, but I lost your screen entirely.
That's what I'm saying. Is on the very top, you'll see one of them has a red dot on it. Click on that one for the different windows,
No, but I don't see anything. I don't see at all. I don't see your whole site. But I can still talk to you, and you can still see me.
Yes,
well,
sir.
that was a ill-fated attempt to get this picture, but it's online. You can see it. So I turn around, and it's Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, and I look at him, and I'm like thinking this has got to be some kind of surreal dream because there's no way he's going to be looking. And he goes, "I think I know you." I said, I really don't think you know me, Paul, but thank you very much. It's very, no, I do know you. I've seen you somewhere. And I know he's not a big sports fan. So the woman who was his publicist, she goes, "He means the movie." I went, oh, you mean Jerry Maguire? He goes, "That's it. You're the guy that makes him cry."
Oh,
and
nice.
I said, wait a minute, I think I just found you again here. No, that's the picture thing. Let me get rid of this. And he says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Roy." He goes, "Don't make me cry, Roy." Now, when Paul McCartney said that, I mean, you can imagine, I'm a Beatle collector. My house is filled with Beatle memorabilia all over my house. I have one room devoted to just the Beatles. It was stunning. And I realized how valuable being in a movie could be, especially if you have a speaking part. And he started bringing friends over. "This is the guy that makes him cry from Jerry Maguire."
Wow.
You got to meet Jimmy McGurney. He's a guy from Liverpool, the funniest guy I know. "Jimmy, come here. This is the guy that made him cry." And I'm just sitting there. This is surreal. But that's the scene from the movie that I'll never ever forget because it gave me a little visibility in worlds that I'd never imagined. And of course, it won the Academy Award. So,
Well, of course it did. Now, how long? When was that though? How long ago was that you met Paul?
I'll tell you exactly when that
No.
was. That was 1999.
Got it.
So
Cool.
and it was almost the end of the millennium, and it was in Liverpool. It was so cold that night, but I remember him just talking to me like he was very nice. It was very nice at this point. He had just lost Linda, his wife,
Hmm.
and so he was by himself, and no one was talking to him at his own reception. I mean, he was just sitting there with his hands in his pocket.
Well, probably because I'm guessing people were like, well, I don't want to go up to talk to him. I don't, they're probably like,
Oh, you
I
know what's
can't.
funny? You know what's funny? His brother was there. His name was Mike McCartney, but he calls himself
Yes,
Mike. His nickname is Mike McGear.
right.
And I started talking to him for a long chat. I said, "Do you think Paul will come in tonight?" He goes, "I don't think so. He's not really into this whole reception stuff." And the next thing I know, he's there. But they grew up, obviously brothers. And can you imagine what it must have been like? Your brother's Paul McCartney and you're Mike McCartney. But
Well,
he's a photographer. I'm talking about Mike
yeah,
McCartney. He's
yeah.
a photographer, and he sold a lot of books based on the fact that he was McCartney's brother. I'm sure Paul's been very nice to him over the years.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't hurt to be related to Paul.
And
Um,
I couldn't get over how short Paul McCartney was. He was probably like 5'5".
well,
Really, he was a little
well,
guy.
well,
Huh?
because when we see him on TV, we see him everywhere. We kind of think of this big guy, and then
Right.
you're right, he's
Exactly.
not. He's fairly slight and so forth. I've seen him, and a bunch of times in concert and so forth. And I had a chance to meet Ringo at an art gallery showing, and I'll never forget. My friend said, "Look, when you speak to him and so forth, just spend like 30 seconds, just and move it along, kind of thing."
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, fine. So I walk up to Ringo and I said, "Oh, hey Ringo, listen, first of all, I got to tell you, your son Zach is an incredible drummer with the Who.
With the Who.
He's absolutely amazing." And was, "Oh, thank you very much, thank you." And then I said, "Also, I really appreciate the fact that you're raising money for this foundation through your artwork. It's really fascinating." Oh, and he starts talking about the artwork, and meanwhile, in my head, what's happening, Roy? I'm thinking, when's my 30 seconds up? He's engaged with me talking away, and I'm like, I was about to say, like, "I'm sorry, Ringo, I have to go. I got So it was a great conversation, but it's funny when one thing I always understand is when you talk to people and you're not sure what to ask them, instead of saying, "Oh, I'm your biggest fan" or some stuff like that, talk to them about their kids or their family and talk to
Oh,
them about what they're proud of.
I got something else to talk to him about. In fact, I do an essay in my show, dogs. I think if you talk to people about dogs, their dog, I don't care if you differ politically or in sports or in philosophical views of life, if you talk to somebody about their dog, they'll open up. And I did a piece, and again, it's online on YouTube,
Yeah.
called "What My Dog Taught Me About Life," and it's an essay about the intelligence of the humanity of a dog. It kind of, even though a dog isn't human, he's humane, and or she, and he taught me so much. And I do an essay called, and it's kind of funny at first, and towards the end it gets touching, very touching, and people are weeping at the end of this piece. So I think the two things that people can be related to, if you talk about their kids, yes, but if you talk about their dog, not even so much about their cat. I mean, people love their cats. I love cats, but I'm a dog person.
Yeah.
But people don't have the same connection to one another talking about their cat as they can about their dog.
Correct.
And I
Well, for
believe that I believe dogs themselves can bring. I saw an interview with Ricky Gervais the other day, and he said, "I don't believe in God. I believe in dog."
I believe in dog.
But he also had the famous line. He goes, "My Labrador Retriever thinks that any idea I have is the best idea he's ever heard." And I think that's the summation of a Labrador Retriever. They're always okay to do anything you want. They think it's a great day. Every day
Oh,
is a great
absolutely.
day.
The
And if
happiest
there's
day of their
food,
life. Yeah.
it's every day is the best day of their life, and everything about a dog can be summed up by this: they're always happy to see you when you come home. I don't know, except when they get into garbage, of course. But I don't know how, if I know anybody in my lifetime who is always happy to see me when I walk through the door. This dog to my left, which you can't see, he was a rescue. I rescued him after we lost Kobe Bryant. His name is Kobe. In fact, I wrote a children's book called Kobe and a Boy Named Roy. And people can buy that also at royfirestone.com, and I'll sign it personally. But we donate the proceeds to Labrador Retriever Rescue in Los Angeles.
That's great.
And we've raised about $4,000 so far. But I'm very, very, very proud of it. Even my sister, who's a professional artist, she did the artwork. It's a book for little children, but it's not about Kobe Bryant. It's about a boy and his dog, basically. And I just have that belief that dogs are a bridge to people who don't agree.
Well, I got to show you something real quick. First cameo appearance ever of my dog, Duke, who's conked out right now, right there. He's not really impressed by this interview. He's just sleeping right there. But anyway, so moving on, because there's a couple of questions. I was really curious about this stuff. People tend to, when we watch an interview or an interview happening, and we see you talking to whoever it is, if it's Barry Bonds, if it's Muhammad Ali, whoever it is, we kind of think, oh, look how easy that is. He's just sitting down in a chair and just talking. Tell me a little bit about what really happens behind the scenes and what you need to do to prepare for these interviews that a lot of us don't know about.
Well, first of all, that's the key word, prepare. I really did prepare. I remember Larry King, who I knew since I was a little kid, because I grew up in Miami. He started in Miami. He used to be proud of the fact he didn't research, didn't read the books or any of that stuff. And maybe it worked for him, but it certainly wouldn't work for me. I had to research my brains out like it was a finals exam in college. I would take, I'd go to libraries. In those days, we didn't have the computers like we have now. I'm sort of dating myself, I suppose, but up until the beginning of the 2000s, we didn't really have any access to all these articles and stuff. And so I would go to libraries, and I would go literally research in a library for 12 hours or something like that. Now, I didn't want to over-research, too. There's a difference when you over-research and you know everything and nothing surprises you. But I was able to, like, if I find something like even in the Jerry Maguire scene where I go, your father lost a leg in a tragic bass fishing accident or whatever that thing, that was an ad-lib joke. But I would find little nuggets, little stories behind these people, something that happened in their life, and it would strike up conversations. And I do think this, I hope this sounds humble, but I don't want it to come off arrogant. I don't think anyone does what I did these days. I don't think the kind of conversations that I did are apparent, certainly in sports, in terms of television interviews of sports people. And we did it for thousands and thousands of shows. And I asked questions that were away from the playing fields or the on court.
Yeah.
And I found that people were very, even you mentioned Barry Bonds, he even cried on my show. It wasn't the only badge I wore, by the way. People think, oh, it's all he does is make them cry. I've heard that line too, which is ridiculous. But because we did, almost 6,000 shows, and I think we had 13 people cry at 6,000. So it wasn't like every day someone's crying. But you know what, though? I'll tell you the truth, Mark. I find that would have been the most viral of the shows because of emotion. When people see, God knows what, Oprah's, all these shows, or Barbara Walters, they always want to remember the emotional moment. And I did have a lot of emotional moments on the show. And I'm proud of that. And as I said before, you asked a question about preparation. It's everything. I never wrote a question down. I still don't. I'm still doing interviews. But I try to get the essence. I put a word down, father suicide, or whatever it was. And I would see that and I'd remember that. But it was an amazing adventure for me interviewing. And I think that's what it was, truly an adventure. I learned about people. Even through osmosis, I had people way smarter than me, like David Halberstam, the late writer. George Will was on our show. We had, I said Nixon. I interviewed Nixon. I interviewed Madonna. And I think even through osmosis, I learned a lot about me and what my interests were. And I became transfixed in with my guest stories. And then you have to dispose of them on a Wednesday, and tomorrow it starts all over again on a Thursday. It's like having a game every night. Like you're playing 162 baseball games. There was 250 talk shows in a given year.
Wow. So, Roy, I got to congratulate you. You just made history by combining two names in one breath. You said Nixon and then you said Madonna. Those two names have never been said
Never been
together.
said in the same sentence. I think you're right.
Congratulations. That's
Well,
amazing.
Madonna was doing that Material Girl era.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
She didn't give me a whole lot, but it was Madonna, and she chatted with me for a little while. But I'll tell you, Nixon, if you got a minute
Of
about
course.
Nixon.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, again, all of these pictures, people, I wish I could share them now, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah.
But he invited me to do a baseball only interview, and no Watergate questions or anything like that. At least not at first. And he was always very stern. He talked like this. But when we started talking baseball, he kind of loosened up a little bit. And after a while, we're joshing with you. This is Nixon now. He only did like 5 major interviews since Watergate, and I was one of them. It was all about baseball.
Oh.
I always enjoyed Mike Schmidt when he played for the Phillies. You were about Brooks Robinson guy. He had done some research himself, by the way. And we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden, I'm feeling so loose. And I was not a fan of Nixon. A lot of us are in that generation were not fans of Nixon.
Sure.
I actually had the gumption and the nerve to say to him, I don't even know where it came from. Mr. President, I've really enjoyed ourselves. Just to give you an idea where I was in 1972, my friend Bob and I threw a rock at your limousine.
Oh.
I said, what? And he looks at me with kind of a smile on his face. He goes, well, I guess you're pardoned too.
Nice.
So, I actually had fun with Nixon, which had to have been a first, because he got such a kick out of talking baseball with me. And at the end, we're packing up with our equipment and our gear. I had to go back with my crew. He goes, hey, Roy, how about a drink? Let's go get a drink. And I went,
no kidding.
And I had to leave because there was no Uber or anything in those days. It was rush hour. I had to go back with my crew. So I turned Nixon down for a drink. I am not a drinker, by the way, either. But the idea that he was wanted to hang out and have a drink and talk about baseball, it showed to me, he didn't have a ton of friends, maybe. Yeah. And also that he was a little lonely, but he loved talking baseball because I believe that it was his opinion, and his opinion can never be wrong if he has a sports opinion, as opposed to a political opinion.
Great point. Now, it's interesting that you say that because I've also spoken with people that I figured they had to go off and running somewhere, and they were like, no, I can hang out. I had Marshall Falk in here, and this is right when COVID was really getting going. And my events lasted a long time because people had nothing else to really do. So they were hanging out in here talking, and I'll never forget, it was 11 p.m. and Marshall was still hanging out. And I was like, Marshall, yeah, it's 11 p.m. here in New York, and you don't need to go home, but the bar's closing, kind of thing. And it was interesting that I understand some of that. Some folks kind of need that connection.
A great player, and I had him when he was coming out of San Diego, I think it was, and I think that's where he would San Diego State, I want to say.
Yes, he did.
And he told me stories about growing up, and he was from a very, very tough area growing up in Louisiana, I believe. And he just taught. It was riveting. He was a great guest. I could find something good in just about every guest, because the truth is, Mark, I really think I try to find something good in people. I think that's sort of a secret about me. I love people, and I think you can't do what I did for a bunch of years, really parts of 4 different decades, if you aren't really invested in people. You don't have to love them all. I mean, I didn't love Nixon's politics, but I kind of liked him as a baseball fan. And I said, I've interviewed, Miles Davis, who wasn't exactly the touchy-feeliest guy of all time, but he let me play his horn. Are you kidding me? So, I mean, I've had so many things. I had so many things that came my way. I'll tell you another quick story too. Because I'm a live performer, and again, if anybody's listening or knows people who might be interested, they could take a check at it at royfirestone.com, what I do. And it's also on YouTube at Roy Firestone Promo 2023. You can see what I do. But I had Jerry Lewis on the show, the great comedian, Jerry Lewis. And he's talking sports, and we're in the green room before the show. He goes, hey, someone told me that you're a performer. I said, I do. I sing. I do impressions. He goes, well, I'm going to tell you right now, if if you ever play in Las Vegas, I'll be there front row, right? And within 6 months, I got a job to play with the great Lou Rawls in Las Vegas from Steve Wynn. And he couldn't be there that night, but Jerry Lewis sent me a telegram wishing me luck, best wishes. I'm thinking about you. Go get him, break a leg. And I still have the telegram, of course. But the idea that Jerry Lewis would do that. And then also the other part of it is Gale Sayers, the great Gale Sayers, was there opening night for me, promising me he'd be there opening. He really showed up opening night. It was thrilling for me, my life. And you know, I've had multiple lives in this career. It's not just the interviewer, and it's not just a writer and an author, but I also am a performer. And to be able to tell my stories and to be compelling in how I tell them and move people, make them laugh, make them feel, it's a different kind of broadcast for me. It's a live one-man show, and that's what I do, and I just love doing it.
Well, and it looks like your audiences love it too, so that's awesome. Now, all right, I know, you know, it's sort of like we've all heard, like Paul asked, you know, what's your favorite song? It's impossible to sort of name your favorite kid and all that kind of stuff, but do you have a couple of favorite people you've interviewed that really, I mean, you know, that really stand out?
Well, of course, you know, everyone automatically thinks Michael Jordan would be my favorite, but the truth is he was a fairly suspicious guy when you interviewed him. He wasn't, he gave you what he could, but he wasn't, like Charles Barkley is an open book. He's one of my all-time favorite people. And Barkley is a guy that can go for an hour on his mother. He talked about his mother or his grandmother or growing up in Leeds, Alabama, and his mother would be in a chicken factory and bring home wings. But I mean, he would be one. Jim Valvano, the late great Jim Valvano, Jimmy V. He was born to be a guest. Wilt Chamberlain. I remember one time.
Wow.
The first time I met Wilt, he had a $300,000 white Rolls Royce convertible, and two dogs the size of small horses in the back seat. Beautiful blonde, packed in a leather dress on the passenger side, and then I walk over to the driver's side. He's got a purple and silver silk jumpsuit, burgundy beret, orange wraparound sunglasses, a leopard skin scarf, tooled African belt, African walking stick, no shoes. He's 7'2", 320 pounds. He's got this long cigarette holder. I said, Wilt, I would love to have you on the show. Do you think you could do it? He goes, Roy, I would love to do your show, but you have to understand, I'm trying to keep a low profile. And I just love that. And Wilt, I think I just did a 3-part series on Showtime where I was one of the lead people in the series. Wilt was the most unforgettable. I think Rodman, Wilt, and Tyson were the most three unforgettable. But of course, my hero, of course, and always will be, is Ali. And the interesting thing, Mark, is that I never really got to interview Ali since past 1975 when he could really speak openly because he had Parkinson's and he stopped being able to talk very well.
Yeah.
So, but I did many, many, many fundraisers with him. And I do need about 2 minutes, 3 minutes to tell you an amazing story that I think it'll be very moving.
Of course, yeah.
We went to a nursing home in South Beach, Florida with Ali when I first started in Miami. And he goes into this room, and there's elderly people there, and he starts to, toy with, I'm great, I'm fast, can nobody whoop me, I'm so fast, and what's my name? And nobody knew his name because they were all in their 90s, right? They had no idea what's going on. So then he goes into another room, and he sees it's just one man, a black man in a wheelchair. He's probably about 98 years old. Ali, hey, old man, what's my name? What is my name? And the man didn't respond. So Ali starts walking away, and as he's walking away, I see the old man suddenly, like a light went off in his head, and he remembered, and he starts looking at Ali, and he points to him, and he goes, I know who you are. You know who I am. Who am I? He goes, you're the greatest of all time. I love you. My family love you. You make my heart proud to know you because you are the greatest of all time. He goes, that's right, old man. And now tell everybody, what is my name? And the old man goes, Joe Louis. Now here's where it's a beautiful story. I tell this in my live show, but this is why this is beautiful. every member of Ali's entourage tried to correct, hey, oh man, that ain't no Joe. And he stopped him. He stopped him and he goes, what are you doing? But he said your name. He said, I know what he said, but I want you to know something. You never correct an old man. How dare you? That man just said his dream came true. And he said his dream came true because he met the champ. And in his mind, the only champ that mattered to him was Joe Louis. So don't let his dream go away, because tonight, and he goes like this, and I'll never forget me chills telling you this, because tonight, my name is Joe Louis. Wow, what a beautiful thing. And why was it beautiful? It was beautiful because this great, big, iconic figure was deferring to an elderly man for a few moments to get his joy up and to uplift this boy, this man who was a boy, who's now an elderly man. And he said, in your life, George Washington Carver said it this way: how far you go in life depends upon your ability to be tender with the young and compassionate with the aged and tolerant of the weak and the strong, because someday in your life you will have been every one of those.
All those.
Yourself. And it was a fabulous experience for me. That was the greatest memory I have with Ali. And I did many, many, many fundraisers with Ali on stage. And as the years passed, he had less and less ability. To some years, he couldn't even stand anymore. But he was my hero. He was my most unforgettable. But man, I mean, in some way, shape, or form, I could point to something in every person I've ever met and find something that was really redeeming. And I don't say that in a corny way, and I don't say that in a Christmassy kind of holiday way, but we need to find the good in people.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the message that I send in my show.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I feel in the same way, where I find value in every single conversation that I have, however it is. And I think that's so important. And
well, isn't what you do, isn't this interview, not just my interview, but all the people watching today, you said you want to improve the lives of other people.
Yeah.
I think that's one of your mission statements, if you will. And I don't have that kind of, I hope it doesn't sound arrogant, because I don't improve the life of somebody because of my interviews. But if I can inspire somebody through something that someone was said on my show, or I say in my live show, I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing to connect with people and to make people feel better about their lives every single day. We don't do enough uplifting of other people in this world. And I don't care if it's somebody who sells newspapers on the corner, a homeless person, a CEO of a company. Find something that uplifts them beyond their own success or lack of it. And I think you're doing a good thing.
No, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Look, I'm going to jump in and ask a couple. Some people have asked a couple questions. I'm going to just throw them at you real quick. Matt Wolf says, "What type of interview do you prefer outside of sports? Meaning entertainment, politics, something else?"
Well, I'm a big music guy. I love interviewing musicians. I have many, many interviews. As I said, I've interviewed everybody from Elton John. I'll tell you a quick Elton John story, too, real quick.
Sure.
He wanted to do this. He saw me at a fundraiser, and he goes, I don't think he quite knew my name. He goes, I see your show all the time. He says, I would like to talk to you. Sure, Elton, whatever you need. So he sits down, and he starts talking about sports. And at first, I thought it was got to be a little blue card. Someone gave him some cards to say something. He knew everything about the Atlanta Braves. He was a knowledgeable. Elton John is a massive Atlanta Braves fan.
Really?
He lives in Atlanta. He grew up he much of his life he's been in Atlanta. He got into baseball because
Elton John
loved baseball. He visits the Braves a lot, even today, and because when he's in Atlanta. And then he told me an amazing story. He goes, when I do a concert and the Braves are in the playoffs, they'll put the game in my earpiece while I do the show.
No
and I
way.
said, you're kidding me. He goes, and if the Braves win, I'll turn off the broadcast and I'll give the audience 10 more songs or 8 more songs. He says, but if they lose, I'll cut the damn thing off. Screw them all. I'm pissed. He really loves his Atlanta Braves.
Wow.
But the answer to, I forget the gentleman's name.
Matt Wolf, yeah.
Matt, I love music. I love talking about music. I got a chance to meet Springsteen and talk to Springsteen. I got a chance to meet Miles Davis, one of the most reluctant interviews of all time. He did an interview with me, wanted to talk about boxing, of course.
Yeah.
But I love talking to musicians about music. And I'm just so lucky to have had that vehicle. I've interviewed Burt Bacharach. I've interviewed Chris Bodie, horn player, great horn player. I've had vocalists come on my show, Josh Groban, away from the sports show, of course. And I just love talking to musicians. I think it's my favorite thing, maybe even more than sports.
I won't tell anybody. Okay. Brad Berquist, he asks, how did Jerry West respond to Winning Time? I know that.
I don't know that at the time he had seen it. I will tell you this. I don't know if I've ever been in a more, when I say it was almost uncomfortably candid on his part, when he's talking about his father and West Virginia and how he was abused by his father. Again, not sexually abused, but physically abused. Sure. And he threatened to kill his father. He had a gun under his pillow. Jerry West, had a gun under his pillow as a little boy. His father beat up his sister, and he wanted to kill his father. And I know the question is, what does he think of Winning Time? But Jerry, if he didn't like Winning Time, you would have heard it. I think he probably would have liked it. I frankly haven't seen it. I've never seen it. I was the Lakers pregame host for all those years, so I lived it. So I know John C. Reilly was great, and I think there are other characters who are great, but I had not yet seen it. I'm going to see it, but I kind of lived it. I was the Laker host for many years here in Los Angeles, so I know the real story.
That's cool. There's a couple more questions, and if anybody has a question, make sure you put it in the Q. There's a Q&A section on the right side there, so throw it in there. JP Grace, he's a recent graduate from HPU with a minor in sports media, and he asks, an early career that he wants to pursue is as a production assistant role for a sports network. Any advice for him? He's just out of school.
Be persistent. Just keep sending out emails. And don't take no for an answer, saying I'll do anything. I'll do a Zoom, talk to you about my passion for production. I interned when I was just a junior in college. Most people intern their senior year, and I got a head start. I think it's very important to be persistent and not take no for an answer. Just say I'll do anything. I really want you to know that and you have to be able to relocate too, obviously, depending upon where you're living. But I actually was a cameraman, and I was an editor too, first part of my career. So I knew all facets of production, and I wasn't the greatest cameraman in the world, trust me, but I learned enough to where I got my foot in the door. And I think that's the key thing to do. Just be persistent.
Oh, that's great. Scott Fox, he's got a question, and because you were chatting earlier about the 70s and the O's, and I remember they had 4 guys win 20 games, right? But tell me a little bit about, he says the O's had an amazing pitching staff in 1970. What are your memories of those guys?
Oh, well, I could do an hour on this one. But first of all, not only will it never happen again for 20-game winners. Yeah. I don't think you'll ever see too many 20-game winners, right. Even one of them on a team. You might see 3 in a given year. 2. I'm talking about in the entire league.
Sure.
Because pitchers are done by the 6th inning now at 100 pitches mostly. But my memories of the Orioles, man, Jim Palmer's still one of my closest friends to this day. And he's a 3-time Cy Young Award winner. But they had Dave McNally, they had Pat Dobson, and they had a guy named Mike Cuellar. Yeah. All of them won 20 games. It's a record that will never be broken ever again because of the limits on pitching now. In fact, I think people have a tendency to maybe overrate, maybe wins, 20 wins, but 20 wins is still, you gave your team a chance to be in a position to win. And even if you got lucky and you got 11 runs and you won the game, you pitched well enough to hang in there and give your team a chance to win. But I had amazing experiences. In fact, the interesting thing is I was a performer as a bat boy for the team in the mornings. I used to do little show and tell kind of things and little bits and comedy and impressions, and they got a kick out of me when I was 15. I ain't 15 anymore. I can tell you, it was an entree for me to meet all 4 of those 20-game winners. I knew them all, and I had a fabulous time. And again, earlier I talked about persistence. I had to talk my way into being a bat boy. I waited for the equipment truck to arrive, and in spring training in Miami, and I talked my way into it because I would not take no for an answer. And I think maybe the key to the whole essence of success is just don't back down, don't give up, and just never take no for an answer. Just say, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get this job. And a lot of people do it. And there's a lot of heartbreak in the business, but boy, when you get what you want to do, there's no joy like it, really isn't.
You just answered my question backwards, because I was curious, why on earth would you pick the Orioles, being born and raised in Miami and so on? And it makes sense now, because that's where they were trained.
That's where they trained.
Yeah.
In fact, the stadium where they trained doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of great memories. And as I said, Brooks Robinson was my childhood hero. And a beautiful thing happened in 2012. That's 11 years ago. He called me up on the phone to ask me if I would introduce his statue at the Oriole Park at Camden Yards, the Oriole Stadium.
Wow.
And it was such a thrill. I remember looking at the phone like, are you kidding me? Like looking at the phone when he asked me that. And it's also on YouTube. And it's one of my biggest public thrills in my life. He was my childhood hero. It's like, I don't know who anyone's childhood hero is these days, but imagine somebody asked you to do something that personal for them. I couldn't say yes fast enough. It was very emotional for me to write an essay about my hero, and he was very, very dear to me, very special person.
So Roy, we really have a lot in common. Now, I will tell you a quick Brooks Robinson story from my perspective. It was 1987, I think it was, and this is just sort of the advent of these hobby card shows where they'd have the players come and sign autographs and so forth. And this was before they were really charging money. There was one guy who was charging $25 per signature, and everyone was appalled by that. His name was Mickey Mantle. Not sure if you've heard of him or not. Anyways, and Barry Bonds was a rookie, just a rookie, and he was at the show and just leaning back like he was a tough guy on campus, and nobody really was getting their stuff signed by him. I ended up getting a ball signed by him where he signed it Barry Bonds 24, because that was his number his rookie year.
Right.
And I've never seen one since with it. I mean, but my Brooks Robinson story is, and I actually still talk about this now, and I wrote about it. But I'll never forget going up to him, and I had a ball for him to sign. And, I hand it to him and I say, "Hey, Mr. Robinson, my name is Mark. If you could sign it to Mark." And he looks at me and he says, "Mark, nice to meet you." And then he looks right at my eyes and says, "Mark, tell me, what do you do for a living? What's your job?" And I kind of did one of those things where I looked behind me, like, who's he talking to?
Yeah,
and I was completely caught off guard. Yeah, and
the kind of guy he was.
I told him, and he was interested and fascinated and wanted to talk about it. And that was the first time I'd ever met an athlete at the time who actually seemed to give a crap, kind of thing, right? Everybody else was like, "All right, what's your name? What do you want?"
Well, that's what made Brooks. Yeah. That's what made him special. And I could tell you that he did that for everybody. I'm not saying it wasn't special to you in that moment, but I'm saying he would take the time to, when he signed an autograph, to get in conversation with somebody, and that's what made him special. It wasn't just his great play. He won 16 straight Gold Gloves, but it wasn't just his play. It was his manner. It was the way he approached life and approached the fans and the game. And I will never forget that. I think it truly helped me as an adult and how I address things that happen in my life with grace and humility, I hope. And I think that Brooks was the guy that taught me that even as a young kid.
That's amazing. Let's see. Hang on a second. I lost track. Here we go. Tom Rohrer was asking, what do you think of Steph Curry and his ranking as an all-time great?
Well, I can't imagine there be anybody who's a better shooter, especially, left alone at a three-point line.
Yeah.
You could make an argument, maybe Maravich, maybe Reggie Miller, but not even Jordan could shoot like that, I don't think. Or Kobe couldn't shoot quite like that. Kobe was a pretty good shooter too. But I think Curry deserves consideration to be the greatest shooter of all time. Now, is he the best player of all time? No, but I'd be hard pressed to find a better shot maker than him. And I also think, he's had his share of injuries. He's been worn down physically, but boy, in his prime and in his wheelhouse, he'll get back to it again. He's almost unguardable. He's just an amazing athlete, and the best shooter. I would put him certainly in the top 10 of the greatest NBA players of all time. But boy, it's tough. That list is tough because it's front loaded with a lot of big men. With Kareem and Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, those three right there. Then you got, you start thinking about LeBron, and as you go down the list, you say, where's Steph Curry going to play? And Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. But Curry certainly is the best shooter I've ever seen on a regular basis. I did interview Maravich at the very end of his life. In fact, he passed away just weeks after my interview. It's online also.
Yeah.
And he was in college. They didn't have the 3-point play. If he had a 3-point play in college, he would have shattered every scoring number ever in college basketball. He held the record anyway for many years. But Maravich was the best shooter I ever saw in college until I saw Steph Curry.
Well, and I'm sure we've all seen footage of Steph, when he's alone in the gym or just warming up, and he's making shot, half court everywhere. Yeah. It's absolutely amazing.
I saw Curry make a 70-foot shot, and it wasn't just a Hail Mary, throw it up and hope it goes in. It was, he waited. It was like a foul shot almost, and it was swish, 70 feet, unbelievable.
That is crazy. All right, listen, I'm going to wrap this up in a sec, but I'm going to ask you a question that I ask everybody, or a lot of people, and but they're not usually the ones interviewing, thousands of people. So this one might be a little bit more challenging for you. I don't know, but if I said to you that tonight you could have dinner with 3 people, alive or dead, who would they be?
Jackie Robinson, Babe Ruth, and Barack Obama.
Wow.
I do have one quick Obama story to tell you. I've never met Obama. I'm sure politics is not your favorite thing to get on this page, because I'm sure people have different views of Mr. Obama, but I happen to be a fan. Anyway, Bill Walton was at the White House for a reception of the 50 greatest athletes in the NBA history, the 50 greatest players. And Obama's a huge basketball fan, huge. And by the way, Walton told me he did mention my name, and Obama knew who I was because Walton's a friend of mine. So they're going, it's A to Z, and Walton is W at the end of the line.
Right.
And Obama sees, he goes, Bill, I need to talk to you. He goes, what about, Mr. President? What do you need? He goes, we need this is pretty serious stuff. Let's go in this other room. The Secret Service going, what the hell is this? So Obama goes to this room with Bill, and he thinks what's he going to talk about? He goes, Bill, in the 1977 NBA championship, or 75, whatever the year was, he goes, you're playing the 76ers, the Blazers playing 76ers in game 6, and you have 2 fouls to give, and they only took 1 foul with 1:51 left, and Dave Twardzik and this guy, and Walton's going, holy mackerel. He had a memory of a specific game from 45 years before, and he said he realized then that Obama was like a data guy, an information guy, and he had this question he's held all those years, 40 plus, 50 years, whatever it was, to ask Bill Walton why they didn't take the second foul when they had a foul to give and 1:28 whatever it was. Yeah. And Walton was blown, and the secret, all the White House people, Mr. President, we got to go. We got to get into the luncheon. No, I'll be with you in a second. Why wouldn't you take that shot? And he's like arguing with something that happened 45 years before.
That's great.
And I just think he'd be a really interesting guy. Even when we talk about sports, he's talked about Jordan. He's talked about everybody in sports that he's been asked about. He's a very knowledgeable guy, and I would have liked. But Ruth would be the other one, of course, and Jackie Robinson. I would definitely want to interview.
It's interesting, and look, obviously you're showcasing your love for the sport, for baseball. But I always wondered why, some people just don't say things like George Washington, or I'd always be fascinated. I always joke about how I think it'd be, interesting to. Or Genghis Khan, as long as he promises to leave his weapons at the front door, that kind of thing. Yeah. So don't bring those into the restaurant, please.
I would say, though, infamy
Yeah.
is fascinating, but it doesn't make necessarily for a great interview. I mean, you could say, what about Charles Manson, you know?
Yeah.
But infamy and people who are disgusting and horrible, they make for, you know, interesting discussion, but maybe not the best interviews.
No, yeah.
Plus my real passion in life is to find something good in people, and it would be hard to find something good in a mass murderer, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Good point.
but I do enjoy the challenge of interviewing people that are not, you know, your, you know, garden variety interview. I like that too. I like people that had never been. I tell you, Allen Iverson was one of the most surprisingly insightful, thoughtful people I've ever talked to, and I thought he was going to be a real punk, and he wasn't. He was fabulous. So there you go.
You know what? I mean, you're right, though, Roy. It's something where sometimes you really need to have a conversation with someone to really drill down and see what is really behind the facade.
And I think it's missing today in our media. I think
Mm.
everything's now yelling at each other, giving their opinion. It's all opinion shows. But I think sitting down and talking to somebody quietly, reflectively, is something that's missing from broadcasts. And I really, really enjoyed it. I really did.
It's fantastic. On that note, Roy, I really appreciate your time today. I mean, this is fascinating. We can obviously go on for hours.
Thank you.
But thank you for being here. I hope you will get used to the platform and the ability to kind of chat with people and so forth. But
sure. And if
it.
anybody does want to correspond with me, they can go on royfirestone.com. There's a place for you to ask questions or whatever, and also see some of my clips and perhaps buy a book. Well, I'll be happy to sign it. And we do charity benefits for the book signings. So I love doing what I do, and it was a pleasure to spend time with you today, Mark.
I appreciate it, Roy. Thanks so much.
Sure.
One last little final note. If any of you know Paul McCartney well enough to connect him with Roy again, bring it on.